Hi, everybody. I'm Jill Sharnak. I'm the VP of Product at NetDocuments, and just want to start off by thanking Laud and Juan and Alex for the opportunity to share some thinking around large language models and NetDocuments' vision for AI-powered legal workflows. There is a lot to cover today. We've been working towards a lot of new and exciting use cases and just ideas around how to leverage this new maturing technology. And so yeah, I'm just really excited to provide a little bit of history about AI, kind of what kinds of things you should be considering as you evaluate how to incorporate this technology into your business, and just share a little excitement about the future ahead as it relates to legal workflow. So with that, I will share my screen. Give me just a minute. Here we go. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, at NetDocuments, our mission, of course, is to help legal professionals do their best work. And for many, many years, that meant supporting full end-to-end legal workflows, really helping with kind of the course of document lifecycle. And now with evolving large language models and generative AI, we are able to really reimagine every step of that process, from tagging documents to drafting to semantic search. And so we're really thinking to ourselves, right? We wake up in the morning, we think, where does AI fit into this mission? And I suspect that a lot of you listening to this are also, thinking about your AI strategy and kind of asking yourselves the same question, where does AI fit into your organization? And so I really hope to provide a little bit of information about what AI is, how do we think about large language models, what's the technology look like, and then even start to imagine some of those use cases, right, that you could consider as you're thinking about how to take this technology into your own organizations. So first, a little history. It feels like there's a lot of hype around AI, right? And there's a lot of chatter out in the market and lots of people, chiming in. And really, it's easy to think that, oh, this is late breaking, this is new, when really it's been around for many, many years. In fact, I would say the breakthrough happened in June of 2017. And this is when researchers at Google's DeepMind released a paper. They published a paper called "Attention is All You Need." And this is where they introduced a brand new approach to large language models. And this technology has matured, right, into Azure OpenAI, but also Meta and Google. These companies are ramping up their investments and their innovation. And you've got companies like Salesforce and Intercom and Drift, and they're all integrating this technology into their applications. And of course, NetDocuments has been, evaluating AI technology for the last several years as well. Many of them that are on the screen, and frankly, we found them lacking, right? So they're either too narrow, or they're not accurate enough, or they need hundreds of thousands of documents to be trained, and that can be really difficult to apply. And then, drum roll, GPT-3 came out, and just with our initial experimentation, our minds were blown, from the ability to understand terms to party applicability, to capabilities like data extraction. It's just such a mature, powerful technology that we are just so excited now to be thinking about not how to cultivate the underlying technology, but now how do we apply it into really powerful use cases within the legal workflow. But just to be clear, we are not talking about ChatGPT. What that is really the UI application, right? But underlying that application is the technology that powers a product like that. It's GPT-3, 3.5, GPT-4. It comes out in iterative development. And actually, with NetDocuments, we're one of the very few select businesses that have access to Microsoft's bleeding edge GPT-4 32K model, which again has just been so powerful. And we're, again, really excited about the possibilities that this technology unlocks. Okay, so back to the basics, right? What is the core capability of a large language model? And most of you are probably familiar with this, but I'll go through it just for fun. It's the prompting completion. That's kind of the core capability, right? So you might type in, write a tagline for an ice cream shop, and it will come back with, "We serve up smiles with every scoop." And that's a really great and powerful capability. But here at NetDocuments, we're really interested in understanding all of the capabilities that large language models enable, and how do we combine them to create really powerful workflow. So I'll give you an example, but first, let's talk about those other capabilities. So in addition to prompting and generation, one of the other really core capabilities is called embedding. And what embeddings is really, it's about taking any chunk of text and representing it mathematically. And what that means, practically speaking, is that you don't have to search on a keyword or a phrase anymore, but really you can search on meaning, right? And then you can pull that meaning into a prompt that's sent to the large language model, and it gives the LLM the context and the information that's needed to help drive an even more accurate result. So that's a really, really powerful capability. And then the other one on the right is fine tuning. And there's sometimes some confusion around fine tuning because a lot of folks think, oh, I'm fine tuning a model. I need to upload a lot of documents and help, drive an answer. That's really what embeddings is about. What fine tuning does is it helps structure the output. It's really driving greater predictability of what the output is going to look and feel like. And so essentially it's like altering the style. So in this case, it's say I type in the word burger into a prompt. I might get the recipe for a burger or the origin of a burger or the definition of a burger. But what I'm trying to train the model to say is when I type something into the prompt, I want to know if it's edible or inedible. And this is kind of a simple example, right? But essentially what we're doing here is we're just training the model to be more consistent, more predictable in the way that the generation is provided. So that's a really quick overview and description of kind of the three core capabilities: prompting, embeddings, and fine-tuning. And usually at this point, I get a lot of questions, right? So I'm sure many of you have a question in your mind right now, and it's probably around security. But it's great. These capabilities seem really exciting, and I can't wait to see what use cases you can apply. But if it's not secure, if it doesn't meet the standards, right, that we have all come to expect to help drive and power our businesses, well, what good is the technology? And I'm here to kind of myth bust a little bit. So we're looking at Azure OpenAI particularly or specifically. And so when you think about Azure OpenAI, customers get the security capabilities of Microsoft Azure while still running the same models as OpenAI. So what that means is you get, the enterprise grade security, you get the 99.9% uptime. You also are able to have private custom AI models, and that can be informed and contextualized with your data. And then lastly, and this is probably the most important piece, is that any input that you put into the large language model, and of course, any output that's generated is all purged. Now, it depends on the specific use case that you're applying the technology, but most use cases will purge the information either within 30 days or immediately. And so that's really great. What I like to think generally is like, hey, if you feel comfortable with the security layer of Microsoft Azure, you should feel comfortable with the security layer of Azure OpenAI. Okay, now we get to some of the really fun stuff. We get to talk about some of the opportunities that this technology unlocks in terms of powering legal workflow. So I'll share a few potential use cases and I'll help illustrate what's possible. And I'll also pepper in a few things to be on the lookout for as you evaluate how to integrate this technology into your organization. So the first use case I'll talk about is one of the more common ones that are being evaluated in terms of looking at large language models and what kind of opportunities they unlock. And that's document drafting. So I'll also cover just a few approaches to keep your eye out for. The first one is Freeform, right? This is kind of your ability to type in any text and get an answer. So this is your prompt and generation. Now, of course, the way that you might ask a question is going to be slightly different than the way I ask it. And so this can be really tricky because the Freeform approach means that it can be structured going in, and that usually means that it's equally unstructured and inconsistent, coming out. And again, like when you're in the legal vertical, and consistency against your best practice and your precedent and consistency in the way that you deliver client service is really important. This can be a little nerve-wracking, right? This type of approach. And so a lot of organizations are thinking, in order to use a Freeform approach effectively, this means that I'm going to have to ensure that all of my users are trained on prompt design. You need to make sure that they're trained to type in the prompt in exactly the same way, the same kind of consistent wording that you've used, that you've tested, and that you've confirmed is consistent with the kind of output that you'd like your organization to comply with. And then, of course, you need to execute on that training consistently, which can be a little tricky. So oftentimes, instead of this free-form model, a lot of folks will look for this model, which is more closed, right? And I think about this as more of a traditional software vendor approach, where you essentially build pre-built skills. So a user could click a button, quick draft or rewrite, and behind that UI already sits a predefined prompt. It's been written, it's been tested, and it meets the expectation. And it certainly solves the structure problem. That's a really great thing, but it does mean that you're dependent on the vendor to build to your needs. And if you've experimented at all with prompt design or with large language models, I think you'll agree that prompt design is super powerful. Even the small nuances, the small kind of wording changes to a prompt can dramatically change the results that you get on the back end. And so I think the trick to closed as well as freeform approaches to this technology will both kind of miss the power of prompt design, that ability to experiment to meet your needs, right? The Wall Street Journal, I can quote them here. They said the hottest new programming language is English, or I would append that to say whatever language you speak in the world, whatever language can be, spoken and written, that is the new most powerful programming language. And the reason why is because that's exactly how developers interact with this technology. Instead of looking at coding languages, it is essentially this: you can draft a prompt, and what I've done here is I've highlighted some of the terms or some of the places in that prompt that can be interchangeable, that are more variable, the things that, say, a user might want to swap in and out, but ultimately the structure of that prompt is still really effective. And so my suggestion as you're evaluating how to leverage this technology is to really look for a solution that doesn't take the power of prompt design and hide it behind a user interface. You really want to make sure that, not only, are there going to be out of the box skills, and I'm sure they will be of high value, but you also want to be able to have the control to do your own experimentation and make your own tweaks to the prompt design in order to deliver exactly what's going to be most effective for your organization. Think about this as kind of a have your cake and eat it too moment. So quick example of what I mean by kind of, prompt design and what that might look like. Imagine if instead of just having a free-form text or an out-of-the-box prompt, you have a tool that can help you collect the information that's then fed into a prompt, right? So what you're seeing on the screen right now is a simple application build, right, where you would be able to turn this into an intake form where a user could fill out the answer, enter in the purchase type, and that they want a clause to be more favorable to a certain party. And you could have that information fed into a prompt that you've already defined and engineered. And so you can see kind of the highlights piece, right? What you select on the left will help feed into that purchase type on the right, et cetera, et cetera. And then in addition to the prompt itself, do you remember the capability of embeddings that I mentioned a little while back? Well, here's an example of how that would be integrated into the use case. So you'd essentially take a set of relevant precedent, right, that you want to use as context to help shape the output that the LLM delivers back. So in addition to the prompt and the user inputs, you could include embeddings. And then how that turns out on the end user side is, imagine the user is looking at third-party paper. Imagine this is a SaaS agreement, and they want to rewrite a clause, and they want that to be more favorable to a certain party, right? So they could highlight that text. And imagine then if you get that intake form that we had just designed, we say, okay, this is a SaaS agreement. I want it to be more favorable to the customer. I'd hit continue. And then what I would see is a rewritten clause with that kind of rewritten language to be more favorable to the customer. And if the user scrolled down, they could see the analysis, right? Essentially, this is the rationale. And for a long time, folks thought that the large language models, they came up with the answer and there's really no telling what fed that answer. But in our experimentation, we found it quite easy. You could actually just ask it for its rationale, and the model serves that rationale back up. And as an example of fine tuning, in some cases, those prompt designs, they can be really complicated, right? And in turn, the analysis or the rationale behind the answer could be pages upon pages long. But in some cases, you might not want to serve that lengthy rationale up to your users. And so an example of fine tuning might be, oh, I'd like to summarize the analysis to maybe a 3-sentence synopsis that I could serve back up to my users. So that's just an example of kind of styling the output, driving a more predictable and consistent result. I love this use case because it really ties together the capabilities of prompting with embedding and fine tuning together. And you could really start to imagine kind of how these steps in document lifecycle and in legal workflow can be reimagined. But I do have a couple more use cases as well. Okay, so let's talk about this one. This is a lot of fun. Automation in data management. This one is particularly exciting for a lot of people that I talk to, because this is a problem that so many of NetDocuments customers and really most folks in the legal industry struggle with. And that is, powering search, powering reportability, powering security with a really well-profiled document. And today that means that there's a lot of manual effort that goes into tagging and adding the metadata to documents. But there's, I think, a strong agreement that metadata and that appropriate tagging is the lifeblood of a document management or knowledge management system, and it really helps fuel those robust search experiences. But like I said, also security and also reportability, right? So it's so important that profiling is done, but it's really difficult to do, A, because it's manual, and then B, because it's manual, it's difficult to do consistently. So I get the struggle. The struggle is real, right? But now imagine a process of automatic profiling. So picture this. A document is uploaded by the user, and at that point, we can automatically send that document to the API for classification. What's more is that you could leverage a taxonomy as an embedding. So maybe your organization has a custom legal taxonomy. Maybe you've adopted a unified kind of industry standard, something like the Sally taxonomy. Either way, you can document that, or classify rather, that document type. And then because you would be able to know kind of dynamic metadata, so associated with a certain document type, you might also want to trigger prompts for additional associated fields. So for example, if you have an agreement as your document type, you might also want to get the effective date or the expiration date, the deal size. Those are the types of associated attributes that you could also automatically send as prompts, and then have all of those completions pre-populate or pre-fill that profile editor. So essentially automatically profiling that document. And then the user can review, they can edit, they can submit that document for uploading. But now that document, without having the manual effort of having to create all of that from scratch or do it in consistent manner, it's all automatically populated. This is a really exciting use case, like I said, because so many people struggle with ensuring that the documents are well profiled. So we're really excited about the potential of this use case. But wait, there's more. I have a few more use cases I'll go through. One is data extraction. This one, I'll kind of go through the capability, but the application of this capability is endless. There are so many different use cases that I think this could be applied to, but let me just go through the capability itself. Now, imagine having a group of documents. Let's say you've got master services agreements, and you need to extract specific information from them. Today, what that really means is opening up each and every one of these documents, hunting for each piece of information, and then very likely manually keying it into a spreadsheet. It's cumbersome, it takes a lot of time. I've met many individuals who do this on an ongoing basis and do not enjoy that task. So imagine an opportunity where instead of hunting and pecking and manually entering in information, what you could do is you could select that group of documents. You could identify the information that you'd like to pull out. Maybe, it's what's the limitation of liability? what's the venue, what's the governing law, right? You can really insert anything you'd like, and then you could determine the output. So is it text? Is it a number? Is it true, false? And that's, also, what's really cool then is you could also determine if you want to include the source information so that you can have like quick links to the locations in each of the documents where the answers are coming from. Now, the output of this could be a CSV file, or it could be populated into a data table. There's a lot of different options for the output, but for the sake of the example, let's assume you choose a data table. So in that case, you could pull it into this view, and even on the right-hand side, then you would be able to have the source information. So this is a real simple example, and I'm sure in your minds, you're spinning with all the possible applications of this capability in your own workflows. I think this one just has a tremendous amount of potential to really streamline tasks and really just reimagine kind of the some of the day-to-day tasks that are at hand. Okay, one more. This is a fun one. Document Q&A. This last use case is similar in the sense that you're looking for something, but instead of a piece of information in a document, you want to find the answer to a question. And this requires some relative or semantic search capabilities. So let me give you an example. Okay, so in this case, you have a group of corporate resolutions, right? They're all named generically. You can see board resolution with the date. And let's say that instead of going through these documents and looking for pieces of information, you have a question. And your question is, I want to know how long the subsidiary company has been in existence for. Now, in order to answer that question today, you would open up each document and you would search for your answer. But imagine instead, if you could ask that question, have the relational search power the answer. So what that could mean is that you might have an answer displayed that would say, Jensen APAC's been in existence for this amount of time. And moreover, the parent corporation formed them on this date and was later, dissolved. And that's really cool. But in addition to all of that, you could also have all the citations, not only to the documents, but to the areas within those documents that shaped the answer. So I've had a couple folks ask me, is this the new way of searching? And I would say it's definitely a way of searching. It may not be the only way of searching of the future. I do believe that there are situations where you're looking for a specific document, right? And that's where a traditional search is really helpful. And other times you're not looking for a document, but you're looking for an answer to a question. And that's really where semantic search is incredibly powerful. So I do see a world, right, where those two kind of search capabilities or approaches live harmoniously. But again, like the power of semantic search, the power of document Q&A is really exciting to think about the different applications and use cases. Okay, I kind of rapid fired through a few use cases. I've got 20 more in my back pocket that I'd love to talk about, but for the sake of time, I'll talk a little bit about how to consider what types of things to consider when you're evaluating how to integrate AI and large language model capabilities into your organization, because it is relatively easy. I'll say this as a product person, relatively easy to insert GPT-3 or 4 into an application. But with such rapid innovation, right, how can you be sure that you're being responsible in how you choose to integrate AI into your org? What I would say is to unlock the full value, it needs to be built different, right? You need to not think of AI as a separate capability, but rather something that sits on and needs to integrate up and down your tech stack, a platform that includes security and your documents and your data and enables legal workflow and automation of that workflow that can harness the power of analytics. And then AI kind of proliferates throughout that entire tech stack. And the reason why that's important are few reasons. The first one is security, right? Every time we think about adding a new capability, a new piece of technology into our portfolio, and I'm certain as you think about how to incorporate it into your organization, you have to think about security. Ideally, it inherits the access controls and the privacy and the security standards that your business needs to operate. And in order to do that, it's an architectural discussion, right? So have a lookout for that. I've talked about embeddings and just how incredibly powerful it is to leverage your own precedent, your own documents, your own best practices to help power even more accurate results. The third one is AI skills. So I've talked about a couple use cases. Imagine if those were pre-built, right? That would be really cool, really valuable. But also imagine all the other things we didn't talk about today, all the other applications that would really help power your business. Well, preserving the ability to build and customize and deploy your own skills is going to be something that I encourage you all to keep an eye out for. And then the last one is future proofing. And this certainly applies to the way that I think about AI. It should apply to the way that you think about AI. You know, today we have a lot of conviction that the GPT series of large language models is very powerful. But what I would say is that there's a lot of rapid innovation, right? And I can definitely see a future where there will be several different large language models that are equally powerful, but maybe are tailored to various use cases. You don't want to be kind of backed into a corner and tied to a single technology. So I would encourage you to think about being model agnostic and making sure that you can create an ecosystem or an architecture that's extensible. So really that's kind of the 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Security, leveraging your precedents, preserving your ability to kind of harness the power of prompt design, and then ensuring that you have a kind of a future-proofed architecture that helps you really take advantage of the rapid innovation that's happening. I talked to a CIO just the other day, and they said the right approach combines continuous innovation with a true commitment to security and reliability. And I knew I couldn't say it any better than that, so I put some quotations around that. I stole that from someone else, but I couldn't agree more. And so with that, I'll just say, thanks again for the opportunity to give you a bit of a sneak peek, right, around how NetDocuments is thinking about AI. We really are committed to helping legal professionals do their best work, and we couldn't be more excited about the maturing technology of AI and large language models, and how best to pull that into our product suite and help help you evaluate how to integrate that into your organization. So thanks again for the opportunity, and we'll be talking soon.